Welcome, future masters. As you can see, I was playing 5-minute Puzzle Rush and I got on a streak. So make sure you like this video. It'll be helpful to me and everybody else. And pretty sure this video is going to take way longer to go through and explain to you than it did for me to beat. So let's go and see what we got, shall we? Alright, this one was just bishop takes free, well, not free rook, but yeah, the knight is pinned, so it's more or less a free rook. Let's see, 244, super easy. What did he play? Oh, knight takes pawn, right? King takes free knight. That one was just, so odd to see that. It was unexpected. This one, queen takes free rook, checkmate. Mo, Larry, and Curly. So this was what, 339. So he played this move. And the move that wins is what? Skewer. Rook f8 skewers the bishop and the queen. So you're going to get that bishop with an x-ray attack. He could have played bishop takes pawn check, queen takes pawn. Would have been the correct answer. Just in case you're wondering. So win a bishop. That's awesome. What is this? 357 Magnum. Okay. Well, the thing that's important here, you have this battery of this queen and bishop. Look where it goes. Right there. And after you take this with check, he goes to the white square and a corner mate. Okay, I'll show it to you. What, 428. Bump and score right there. Mo, Larry, and Curly. Bump, score. Alright, 448. He's got all kinds of problems on F2 and H2, as you could see. That doesn't help. That helps one square. I think his only chance to not get destroyed is knight to F3 to guard H2. So if he plays knight F3, he's guarding H2, but still bishop takes here is a vicious and nasty move. So anyway, he did not play that. $549. Let's see. This is another bump and score, but different. So you're going to use the knight to help you. There's a bump. There's a score that forces the knight, and now smothered me. Okay, 577. Uh-oh, man, I can see this checkmate on F7 coming. Yep. Remember, those F2 and F7 squares are super weak right from the beginning. Alrighty, what do we got here? He played da-da-da-da-da-da. Now our rook is pinned by his queen. So we can't do anything with this rook yet. But I notice that his king has got an open diagonal. So can we hit the open diagonal of his king? Well, yes, our queen intersects E4. So queen takes E4 check. This is an unblockable diagonal. Well, it's an indirectly unblockable. It is blockable, but it's not blockable good. This is the key. This is a deflection move or a decoy to get the queen off of the pin. If this queen is not here, rook takes rook is checkmate. And that's the key thing you have to see. So sacrifice the queen for the pawn. He takes the queen and you take the rook to checkmate it. That one was a little bit harder. harder than a 600 problem, in my opinion. So, for whatever that means. Okay, look at we get the super bishop over here on d4. Well, you prod the super bishop. Bishop takes free knight. It's not rocket science, is it? He was threatening to take my bishop, and 718. This is a classic technique that I figured out in a game, but it's pretty basic stuff. What did he play? He plays a3, which indirectly threatens very little. Pawn, now he's threatening queen takes knight, not pawn takes. He's threatening queen takes knight because he just wins a piece. Pawn takes knight, queen takes rook. Not a big deal for us. However, this is a classic scenario. You notice this king, queen, and my queen are all on the same line. What happens here is that if this knight moves, this queen is now pinned because of the queen. So if we can move this knight to check him with like knight to d3, he cannot play queen takes knight. He'd play pawn takes knight. So knight d3 check is not very good. But we can go to c2, right? We can play knight to c2 check. He can't take it. The only thing it can take is the queen, but the queen can't take it because the queen's pinned by my queen. So guess what I play? Boink. Can't take this. Now this is a simplification combination. You're going to win the exchange by taking the pawn with check, taking the queen, trading queens to remove your liability, and then taking the rook. So now we take the queen, and now we take the rook. He's going to kill this knight with king c1 and king b1, but look. Actually, we're a whole rook ahead. But he's going to take this knight. So we'll be exchange up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to be a rook and knight, a rook and pawn ahead versus a knight. Easy win. All right, 774. Oh, you see it, I'm sure. I see Mo, I see Larry. My queen is Curly. So this gives me bump and score. There's a bump, and there's a score. All right. Now, 840. Now, these numbers are the rating levels of these problems. Well, the what-if technique says, what if I could play queen takes g7? That would be checkmate, right? But if I play queen takes g7, bishop takes my queen, and you lose. So, if I kill this bishop, I checkmate him, don't I? I can play rook takes bishop, which is a good move. But the problem is it's not checkmate, because he can play g6 and just lose the bishop. We want to take this bishop with check. So he moved his queen and take it with check. Game over. It's pretty basic stuff. But it's important you have to learn these things. 869. Man, we got a lot of pieces attacking. Okay, this is the old... You see this kind of formation here? This is a tip-off for a desperado. I take, he takes, I take, he takes, that kind of thing. What happens is bishop takes knight. If he plays queen takes free bishop. All right, we're going to destroy this defender. We're going to, on one hand, I count bishop takes knight, that's a finger. He can play bishop takes queen, that's a finger. I play bishop takes his queen, that's another finger on the other hand. So it's 2-1. And now his bishop has no more pieces to take, and neither does mine. If he moves his bishop away, I move mine away, I'm a piece ahead. He takes my bishop, I take his bishop, I'm still a piece ahead, 2-1. So bishop takes knight. This is the most basic desperado. I take 1, he takes 1. I take 2, and now he cannot take a second piece. Takes a pawn, I take the bishop. Pretty simple. You're a piece ahead. He takes this bishop. We have 2 minor pieces. He's got 1. This is the Desperado. It's a very important sequence to learn. 950. What is going on here? Man, this was really a kind of an annoying, wasn't obvious what to do. But I realized that we have to take this pawn. This one was a spidey senses. My spidey senses told me to take this pawn. I did not calculate it. I did not calculate this. But if he takes bishop takes, rook to b6, the knight prevents him from going here. So we skewer him. And if he goes king to d5, we play rook to d8. Again, this knight will be, double hit by rooks. Rook here, and then he's just got bad problems, dude. He took, I took. Game over. The pawn takes pawn was my spidey senses told me to take that pawn. It wasn't a calculation. Okay, this guy should go backwards to have his rooks defend. He went forward. A huge mistake. Hopefully you see that this is a ladder mate. Right there. You have one rung of the ladder is the second rank of squares, and then the other rank is third rank is the other rung of the ladder. Crunchy. Wing. This is what, 1046. Oh, this is a devastator. You have a knight on the 5th rank. You have the open F square. Queen to the 5th rank, or queen h4 check for black, will win almost every time you play it. This should be almost an automatic sequence for you, and this is why. It's not unblockable, but you cannot block this with advantage. So indirectly, it's technically unblockable. He tries to block it, we take it off. If he takes it, we take his rook. If he doesn't, we're going to move this knight with a hideous discovered check, like knight to e4 and queen f2 mate, things of that nature. So it is technically blockable, but it's unblockable from the practical sense. That was right, 1046. This is 1086. What do we have here? Ha! This is just a two-step. This is a two-step, what I call a hesitation check. What if we played queen to c8? Well, that would checkmate him, except he'd take my queen. Knight takes free queen. So a hesitation check. We're going to back rank mate him, because you see this Mo, Larry, and Curly. Except Larry is a knight, which blocks his escape, and my queen is the curly. So we're going to hit this guy with the hesitation check. We don't want to go to c8 because we lose a piece, but we want to force him. It's a bump and score is what it is. This is a bump and score. There's a bump, and now we've created a new checkmate square. That's the score. But you see, it was still Mo, Larry, and Curly, and that's the key. The Mo, Larry, and Curly is a big freaking giveaway that no one mentions in the world except me. Okay, Mo, Larry, and Curly. Queen to d8, bishop takes free queen, you lose. So queen to a8 check, bingo. Goodbye bishop, queen takes free bishop check, and then queen takes free queen checkmate. Man, my dad would have loved that one. Yes, okay, that means the next one, 1174. Uh-oh, you see Mo, Larry, and Curly. Now this is the same thing. This is a straight back rank checkmate, except you have it's a special case. We have Mo, no Larry and Curly. Except that when we check this guy, we're going to force him forward, and we're going to have a Larry by A3 check. So rook checks, rook takes rook, rook takes rook check, king B2 forced, and then we seal in the tomb. So this is still would qualify as a back rank checkmate, Mo, Larry, and Curly style. Except you get the third blocker comes at the end rather than at the beginning. So here, the tomb is sealed by A3 check, and now you have Mo, Larry, Curly. I swear to you, that's one of the greatest chess memory helpers I've ever seen in my life. And it wasn't just because I thought of it, even though that is true. I did think of it. Okay, here we go. We're almost to a Mo, Larry, and Curly. We need to get this guy blocked. If we can block this off, what if we block this? How do we block it? Well, we can block this with the bishop, right? This combines the Mo, Larry, and Curly with the unblockable diagonal, which is another phrase I invented. So hit this guy with a check on the unblockable diagonal. He can block it, but effectively he cannot block it. He cannot block this to his advantage, which is why he plays F5. And then we take it with check again. He does block it, but that seals the tomb, and Mo, Larry, and Curly checkmate. I should just call this the Mo, Larry, and Curly checkmate show. All right, what do we have? 1266. What's going on here? Oh, this is called the poisoned pawn. And the reason it's called the poisoned pawn is because you got to be very careful. You run the risk of losing your queen. So for those, once you understand that this formation, this whole idea of queen taking the pawn on B7 or B2 from the black perspective, this is known as the poisoned pawn. You've got to be very careful. You can't just take it. You have to take it and have your plan of escape already set up. If you do not have the plan of escape, you're going to lose your queen. So that's what happened to this guy here. Now he can play queen to A6. The problem is this. If he plays queen to A6, we hit him with a knight fork. And you're like, well, knight to B4, that doesn't fork anything except a pawn and a queen. Well, it forks the queen and it forks the forking square. So this will be a knight fork extended. We're not actually forking another piece, but we're forking the square that forks two other pieces. He cannot play queen to D3 guarding C2 because the knight guards that square. He cannot play queen to A4 guarding C2 because the bishop guards that square. So the poisoned pawn has cost white his queen because he got greedy. And my dad said, don't be greedy. So my dad was not a great player. He almost got to the 1600 level a couple of times. He was right there, like 1590 something. I mean, he was right there. But the wisdom of don't be greedy extends far beyond the 1600 rating range. Yeah, that's just some gratuitous exchanges. We end up here clearly one queen for a rook. 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he's got a rook and pawn against queen. But after we play queen to B4, he's in bad trouble. So, don't be greedy. The poisoned pawn lesson was there. All right, let me see what's going on here. All righty. Yeah. This one, his king is trapped. So how do we exploit the trap? Always look to check him. Oops, checkmate. Pretty basic. But, knowing that when he's trapped, look to check him. These are little things that just help you. Sometimes it helps you a lot. Sometimes it gives you just a little bit of help. Okay. This is a killer. This is probably a little tougher. Most 1400 players don't see this move. Ever. They would most likely see bishop takes f7 check and then get stumped. What happens here, this is an extension of the concept of the unblockable diagonal, because it is blockable, but it's blocked, and the piece that blocks it is in a pin. So queen takes f7. This is a destruction sacrifice. You destroyed the kingside defenses. If he goes into the corner, king h8, queen takes rook as mate. So he has to take the queen. And now, since the rook is pinned, he's easy money. Notice he's going to take my rook and checkmate me, except he never gets to. So let's look at this one more time. So here, we're going to hammer the weak square. Remember, f2 and f7 are weak right from the beginning of the game. We're going to hit this guy and pin this rook and exploit the lack of mobility with the rook checkmating. So queen takes pawn check, rook takes, and then rook to e8 is checkmate. Super fantastic. $14-12. Okay. Oh, I see Mo, Larry, and Curly. Except I only need Mo and Larry when he's in the corner. Oh, brother. Well, my dad's rule is, what's he trying to do to me? Queen to e7 checkmate. Sorry, chump. Ain't gonna happen today. So, this is a special case. Now, we're gonna check this guy. He's gonna play knight to g1, blocking. And so you have to realize what you have to do. And I did this in like a couple of seconds. This is how you get 40. In the beginning, this will take you a while to figure this out. In fact, you might want to pause this video and try to figure out how to check this guy and exploit his position before he can checkmate you. And we'll be back in 3, 2, 1. Boom, we're back. Now, are you ready to see the move? You have to see a key sequence in your visualization. This is the only move that wins. Knight goes back, and now you're like, what do I do? You have to see this move, which is what I call, it's based off of the queen self-sealing checkmate ability of covering diagonals. Queen e1 is checkmate, because only the queen can do this back rank mate and seal a diagonal at the same time. So this is the sequence. So when this came up, it was like, I see this, my eye went straight to this. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to back rank check him. He's going to go back there, and I need to play a sacrifice. So queen doesn't get it. So I just go, rook goes, bing, bang, boom. I did this super fast. Well, not Hikaru fast. No, that's craziness. That's really super fast, but I did it super fast. What do we got here? Man, this open diagonal looks bad for white. Oh, you took my piece, you jerk. Queen takes free rook. I'm going to have to checkmate you for that, buddy. Now, always remember, when you're on this diagonal, there's sometimes two checkmates. Sometimes queen to the corner is checkmate. Other times queen to the knight file is checkmate. In this case, queen g2. But sometimes you have two checkmates. So that's the key thing from these checkmate positions, is that you got to pay attention that this bishop and queen will sometimes have two checkmates, and a rook on the 7th rank will sometimes also have 2 or 3. Sometimes it's queen f2, queen g2, or queen h2. All 3 could be checkmate. It just depends. So there's just the key point there is that sometimes there's more than one checkmate. You only need one, but if you have two to choose from, oh man, that's awesome. Okay, now this one is a little bit different, a little bit harder. So look at this and see. I'm going to get a drink. So what's going on here is that this one's going to require a little bit more of a finesse move that you may not normally see. All right. So let me show you this finesse move. What happens is this bishop, I call it sometimes a half a defender. And the reason I call it a half defender is it defends one color of squares. So he defends white squares quite well. Dark squares, not so much. So look at this. We have this dark square check guarded by our knight. Now, here's another one. In general, knight and queen is better than queen and bishop. Grandmasters will tell you this. So what happens, and this is going to show you why this is the case, or one reason why it's the case. The knight has a chance to help you on both colors. Not in this problem, but in the real world. Now, the problem with the bishop is that he's a very clunky defender on mobility. So, and this, again, this goes back to my dad's old rule. Hey, you have a light square bishop. Well, I'm going to hit you on the dark squares. Kaboom. And this is the geometry that gets him. Notice we have a Mo, Larry, and Curly set up with this knight. So you look back here. We're going to checkmate this guy because, look, we've got Mo, Larry, and Curly. But it's a special case. Now we check this guy on the dark square because his bishop is terrible on dark squares. He's forced to play one move only. Bishop to f1. And then it's goodbye, Charlie. So we do back rank checkmate him. And we do have a Mo, Larry, and Curly back rank mate, but there's nothing there. So it's like I said, it's really a special case. But this is the power of Mo, Larry, and Curly, is that they give you this idea that you have a decisive checkmate coming, one way or the other. You can't do it directly because the king guards f1, so he would just go back here and you got nothing. So we go and follow my dad's rule, attack the dark square. Again, my dad was not a great player, but his rules that he had, they're unbelievable, as you can see. This is not looking good with this open file against this king. Just right off the top, it looks terrible for white. Okay, so this one actually took me a few more seconds than it should have. But, tomato, tomato. Because I realized if I brute force checkmate him, and I'm doing this is how I did it in the actual game. Queen checks, he goes king to f1. If I check him again, he escapes. I'm like, yeah, that's the brute force technique, shows the escape. So, I was goofing around thinking, other ideas of rook sacrifice doesn't work. And I realized, oh, well, just check him, king f1, unblockable diagonal. It is blockable, but again, the blocking seals the tomb. So we hit him with the check. We hit him with the unblockable diagonal, which in this case is blockable, but creates a tomb. And then we finish him. But when you're under the time pressure of these moves, they are surprisingly difficult to find. Hearing the explanation, I'm like, dude, I crushed this problem faster than I did in the actual game because the time element adds, it adds intrigue. Okay. That move turns out to be a horrible move. The smarter move would be something else, h6 maybe, I don't know. But, or bishop to f3 and then bishop to c6 would be a good defensive idea. This looks like a good idea. Oh man, this can't really be guarded. Knight goes back, he chops the knight. He's going to win this pawn for sure, okay? So black probably thought, hey, knight e2, bishop takes knight, rook takes bishop, bishop takes pawn, and, you know, he's in great shape. Too bad that he opens himself up. My dad loved the bishop here, his cobra, and you're going to see why. He's going to make use of a corner checkmate pattern. So taking the bishop opens up the access for the rook. And now you see it, uh-oh. It's not good, dude. It's really not good. Now comes the hammer. So you're like, well, he's safe though. He just plays f6 and he's okay, right? Yeah, well, not so much. e7. Attack the rook. He can't defend the bishop with rook f7 because check with queen, you pawn goes to e8 and queens. So rook to e8. And now what do you play? You should see this fairly quickly. I think it's long enough. You guys have probably figured this out, but if you didn't see it, this is the killer. The cobra bishop on the long diagonal makes its powers felt with the help of this rook that's pinning the other enemy bishop. So now he's toast. This is the only thing he could do. Maybe we're stupid. Maybe we'll play rook takes bishop check, and then he'll play king takes bishop. And you have a good position, but you've squandered your advantage. Bishop takes free bishop is the answer. You're a whole bishop ahead. You know, he could play rook to g8. Yeah, okay. He can't take the bishop because the pawn will queen. So we could just simply, you know, move rook to g5. And now we're threatening multiple things, like bishop to h6. Guarded, retreating the bishop, and it's guarded by the pawn, and the rook is guarded by the bishop and the pawn. So he is dead. But you gotta stay on top of the situation all the way through. You cannot relax your grip. All right, what are we doing here? Okay, this one, not as obvious. You know, you might want to look at this for a couple of minutes. So you could pause the video to see if you can figure out what's going on here. It's very important. If you don't see it, that's fine, because once you see it, you'll never unsee it. If you figure it out, great. If you don't figure it out, it doesn't matter. So pause the video and see if you can do this for, give yourself a couple minutes. And we'll be back in 3, 2, 1. Kaboom, we're back. So what happens here, he's got this tripling on the file. But we have an anchor piece, which is this killer knight. And the key part of this is that at the right moment, you'll notice that this rook here X-ray attacks this back rank undefended rook. And this is the key. So right now it doesn't really work, but we need to make an exchange. Rook takes rook. Queen takes rook. And now the hammer. This is the move you have to see, because this rook is undefended and the queen's diagonal retreat to defend it is blocked by his own pawns and also by my knight. So now this costs the queen. He could play queen takes queen and we checkmate him. So queen takes rook is all he has. He's going to exchange his queen for a rook because, like I said, he cannot take the queen because he gets checkmated on the in-between move. So if he played queen takes queen, Instead of playing knight takes queen and then him taking a rook, we just go rook takes rook, checkmate. Whoops. So we capture back with the cheaper knight. And this is the crusher. You end up being queen for rook, which is a great deal, obviously. So let's go back here. So this is not a good move. Rook d2 looks better than it is. If he plays rook takes rook, rook takes rook, he could sidestep queen e7 and he's safe. He got fancy, trying to go rook to d2, trying to own the second rank. You think that when you triple on the file, you are winning, and you are. But sometimes it's a setup move where you own the file and you're going to squeeze this guy out of moves. He tried to press the advantage, which wasn't as good because his rook is not defended. And that's what cost him. Don't get fancy. My dad said it. Don't get fancy. You saw the reason why. Chess is a game of mistakes. And seeing the mistakes that can be made and avoided is what really separates players in ability. And it comes and goes. You know, you make a mistake today that you would not have made yesterday or the day upcoming. But you made that mistake today, and that's what counts. So, all right, again, my dad's bishop rule. He has a strong dark square bishop. I'm going to operate on the white squares. Hey, how convenient. I have a bishop for that too. So queen h7 check does nothing. He just goes king f8 and escapes. So you want to hit this guy with, you know, what's the favorite tactic? Unblockable check on the diagonal? I agree. So we're going to hit him on the light squares with the bishop. Now he's king f8. He gets checkmated. You surely can see the move that checkmates him if he moves his king to f8. I have confidence in it. King h8 is forced. And now, remember when we checkmated that guy in the back rank with the Mo, Larry, and Curly that was empty? It was the same thing. The bishop is a clumsy defender on the back rank. In this case, this is 90 degrees rotated. This is a side rank checkmate. 1, 2, and 3 side rank checkmate. Which is just, like I said, 90 degrees rotated Mo, Larry, and Curly. This is the same exact sequence that he did over here when it was the white pieces. And 1, 2, 3, we control all of these squares. 1, 2, 3, side rank checkmate. What's funny though is that I did make the side rank checkmate phrase before I did the Mo, Larry, and Curly. So this one is what, 1761. These are getting tougher. Okay. So this one, you could try. The first thing to look at in this case is a brute force technique. Now the brute force technique often will tell us where the guy escapes. So brute force in this position is rook takes bishop check. Sacrifice the bishop, the rook, in your visualization, because in my mind it's free. Rook takes bishop check. King takes rook on g7. Queen to h7 check. Now, king f8, he gets checkmated by queen on f7. So king f6, this is where he's escaping. Hey, that's a checkmate. You ain't escaping jack squat, buddy. I saw this one as well. This was, I think, one move shorter. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, this is still a 5. Okay. Well, I saw the other one, the Decoy Sacrifice. Rook, here's the problem. Yes, the brute force technique of rook takes bishop fails. Rook takes bishop. He doesn't have to take the rook. He can go king to f8. Now, only a really strong player would recognize he has king to f8. So this would work like 95% plus. Rook takes bishop check. But the problem is king to f8 is actually the strongest move. And that's why I recognized that when I was playing it subconsciously. That I've seen this kind of pattern before. This rook check here forces the response. He has only one move, and that's bishop takes rook. And my rule says when you make the move of any move check, if he has only one response, you're winning. He cannot move his king. He has to take the rook. That's why this one wins. Because now we just destroy him. Hey, you have a dark square bishop? We operate on the light squares, brother. That's my dad's rule right there. 2 problems in a row. Same rule. Okay, that was a 1761. Yes, so now it's 1848. What did he take? That jerk took a pawn. Well, this one is not a poison pawn, but yeah. Okay, this is not a good move. Here's the sequence. Look at this. Queen takes pawn is absolutely ridiculous because look at what white has. He's got 1 piece developed, it's queen. Black has 3 pieces developed, bishop, queen, and rook. So conceptually, bad things could happen. And in this case, it did happen. This bishop needs to be developed. You know, bishop to d2 would be good. And, you know, better than what he did. He's got a problem. The thing is, if he doesn't see the combo, really the best move is queen to d2. But only a really strong player would recognize that. It's easier to see this combo as an attacker than it is as a defender. So I know it's coming. So I know queen to d2 is really the move he needs to play, as ugly as that is. Because he gets hammered by the same thing that we did before. f2 and f7 are hideously weak. Well, this one's attacked 2 times, and when it's captured, it's pinned. Queen sacrifice. It's that same queen sacrifice. Realistically, queen d2 is good, or bishop to e3, sacrificing a pawn so that you don't get destroyed. But only a strong player would see this defensively. And he's checkmated. Just like the other problem we did way back. That was 13 something. It was 1386. This is the problem. Remember, queen takes f7 check. This is the exact same idea. So I had the same problem. The theme was on a 1386 and then again on 1848 rated. Same theme. So what did he play here? This is what, 1893. Okay, well, you know the 2 weakest squares, f2 and f7. But the thing is, if you play queen takes f2 check, he can play queen to e2, neutralizing your threat quickly. So we would like to hesitation check him. And I call it hesitation because you want to make him move to a square and then lay the real check on him. So in visualization, what if I take this pawn, queen to e2, awesome defensive move. So we cannot allow queen to e2. So we're on a hesitation check. Look, this pawn is pinned. This d pawn guards nothing. Hey, look, I can play knight e4 check. Double attacking this. But more importantly, cuts off his escape, number 1. And number 2, hesitation and blocks the defensive square that we know is awesome. And now, finish him. He's finished. He's checkmated. Because the hesitation check moved him into a bad square. So now, 1917. Okay, so what do we got here? This genius. Ah, yes, what a killer move. Very difficult to find this, so I'm just going to show it to you. The thing is, f7 is pinned by the bishop. So it's not guarding this bishop. So we hit this guy with a check. Knight f6 check. If pawn takes knight, queen takes pawn check. Queen takes bishop check, sorry. Pinned by the bishop, so he can't take my queen. And then the other hammer. Because when we check him, his queen is under attack. But remember my rule, removal of liability. If I take his queen, he's going to take my queen. I snap moved this so fast, my spidey senses were on fire. It was knight f6 check, king boom, queen takes bishop boom, and I mean just that fast. So this is what it looked like in the real thing. In the real thing, I was looking at this going, that pawn is pinned, bang, bang, bang. That's how fast I played the moves. Sometimes you see it like a grandmaster sees it. Not often, but it does happen. And that one, I hit that one with grandmaster speed. So here, this is what I call the corner mating pattern. Again, the bishop on the long diagonal is a monster. So we're going to hit this guy with it. What happens is, what if I can put this rook right here? Would you say that's checkmate? I would. So the what if technique says I need a rook on h8. This is the corner mating pattern, and that's why I call it that. If you stick a rook there, it's checkmate. Well, I can't stick a queen there either, but I can stick a queen right here. This destruction sacrifice clears open the line to get the rook to h8, and I got this one fast. Corner mating pattern. Learn it. It's a killer. That was what, 1960. So 1960. That was 38 in a row. Sorry, 37 in a row. This is number 38, 2040. What did this guy do? Okay. One of the key things you must know at some point in endgames. If this pawn goes here, it beats a rook by itself. So I can just go rook takes rook, rook takes rook, b6, and these two pawns will beat the rook straight up. There's nothing he could do. So that's exactly what I did. Knowing this key piece of endgame knowledge, that those two pawns cannot be stomped, is game over. Now this is a little bit special case, because if I go here, his king can fork my pawns. So I do the same thing, but I change the move order, pushing the c pawn. There's nothing he could do because he plays the correct move is to put the rook attacking the forward pawn, but preferably from behind. In front is not the good place to put it because I'm going to hit him with b6 and b7. It's fairly basic stuff. And that queen. So this is based on special knowledge, is what we call this. That the two pawns will win. And then other special knowledge is that this will beat a rook by itself, but his king is close. We need to force the rook to move and not allow king to b5 or king to c5. So we know that b6 and c6 are devastating against a rook. So we're just going to hit this guy with c7 because he cannot get behind the pawns. We're going to force him to defend from the front. And this is the same thing. If this is what happens here is in this position, what I did by changing the move order is like playing b6 and then rook to c8, which is a terrible move. We forced him to play what is a terrible move that he would not play, rook c8. If I play b6, he's going to play king b5 or king to c5. One of these two moves is killer. I don't really know which one is the best move. I don't care. They're good moves. I don't want him playing good moves. I want him playing bad moves. There was no reason for me to calculate this. This just absolutely wins. And these problems are difficult, and you have to do it fast to get 40. This is actually the first time I've ever gotten 40 in the 5 minutes. It's hard. And I was on fire. So, what did he do now? Okay, so I looked at this, and it was like, you know, queen to A1 check, no good. He goes king back to D2. I don't have a rook check down here, but I go, well, you know, I have my unblockable diagonal check, and you're dead. So unblockable diagonal check, because I named the unblockable diagonal check a technique. Because it's a named technique, I use it more now than I ever did. And it's a devastator. I mean, I would do it also in the past, but I have to calculate it. And now it's not, I don't calculate this move. I used to calculate this move in a kind of a very crude brute force fashion. Now it's a technique. I calculate it, but it's a, you know, I go, I'm an unblockable diagonal check. King here, boom, you're checkmated. So because I've turned this from a move that I would discover through calculations, is the best way to put it, now it is an upfront butchering technique. I butchered this guy. So this is the unblockable diagonal technique is, you know, something I made up, I don't know, a month ago, 6 weeks, whatever, 2 months ago. I'm still learning stuff. Oh man, this is looking bad. Kingside attack for black. He took my bishop. You got a lot of nerve, you jerk. Okay, problem is, how many defenders of this king do you see? Sort of one. Zip, zip, zip. Please, dude, don't waste my time. So, the call to arms instantly, rook b2 check, destruction sacrifice, because we can get this queen check double attacking this knight with my bishop on the cobra on the long diagonal, as my father would call it. So, in my visualization, I did this, and bishop c3, and he's toast. He's absolute toast. Goodbye, queen. Hello. And I'm going to take your knight anyway. So here's the thing. When white, when white is playing, he's like knight takes bishop. He's got to play pawn takes knight. Okay. And I will play pawn takes knight, just not the same time he thinks I'm going to play it. Because he's gone to sleep not recognizing that this is a developed piece. Black has one undeveloped piece, this rook, and that's going to change after I sacrifice this one. So every piece that black has on the board is going to attack this king. And no piece he has is going to defend it. In this case, I didn't go rook to b8. Queen to b4 was even better. But that was a possibility. So goodbye, queen. King b1. And then I can play, if I want to play rook to b8 check. King c1. Rook to b2. Or I can just take the knight. It doesn't matter. He's completely toast. Alrighty. That is the end. That was a 21-33. That was the end. And time has been shrinking as the problems go. The time has been shrinking. So 3 strikes and you're out. Well, yeah, this one I had it right, and then I took with the wrong piece. For some reason, I did not play queen takes queen. I took with the king, idiot. when it's obvious queen takes. But under the time pressure, sometimes you short circuit, and then you have to screw up before you get better. Oops, I had this, but I grabbed the king first. Hey, mistakes were made. It happens to every player. Chess is a game of mistakes. That's my first mistake. 40-0. I went 40-0 in under 5 minutes, which is super fast. You've seen my videos where I've gone through 50 problems. Yeah, I didn't go through the first 40 in 5 minutes. It's pretty hard. Anyway, now what goes on here? Unblockable diagonal imbecile. I did not see it in the game. I see it now clear as a bell. This E pawn guards D7. It's crushing. Queen takes D5 is checkmate. Mistakes were made. That's one of them. But it's the pressure. It's the sword of Damocles. You know the time is getting low. I remembered I had 12 seconds left on the clock during the last problem. And it's still, I just couldn't do it. I probably should have. I don't know. I'm not sure. Oh, stupid. Rook F8 check. Followed by King H7, Queen C2 check is what I think it should be. Nope, Rook takes Bishop. I'll just take that off. What are you high? Okay. So this would be called a simplification combination. Crud. I did not look at rook takes. I didn't think rook takes bishop is winning. And it really isn't. It is not winning material. That's why I didn't play rook takes bishop. I saw it, of course. That's an obvious move you look at. But it's not winning material. He's like, wait, just play queen takes bishop. But it's a simplification. He's got 2 bishops for a rook. Rook takes, if he plays queen takes rook. So king takes is what I figured he would play. But I guess he can't play that queen f7 check. It's probably devastating. With a hideous checkmate. So that was my mistake. I'm not winning material. I literally did not see him doing this check, but I don't care about this move. Doesn't do anything. I'll just take it off them so fast, it's not even funny. So like I said, this is a simplification combination. So what happens is he takes this rook, I take this pawn, and I'm 3 pawns up. If he wants to play rook to g3, to win my g pawn, I'd just play rook g5 check. Rook takes rook, pawn takes. He's going to clean these pawns up, but I'm going to push b4, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to play a5 and queen. So the king and pawn endgame here is dead lost for black. So this is a simplification combination. It got me because I couldn't see a material winning move. Rook takes bishop is more or less breaking even materially. It does win 2 bishops for the rook, but whatever. So again, mistakes were made. I had that one. I looked at the clock. I had 12 seconds. So I played great, but I could be better. So trust me, you could try 5-minute puzzle rush and you're not going to get 40. No, I'm just letting you know. If you don't get 40, don't feel bad. I was on fire. Usually I'll get around 30 to 35, depending. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this explanation. A lot of great stuff. Like I said, I did this in 5 minutes. It took almost an hour to explain it. So hopefully you enjoy this. Tell your friends, and I'll see you guys later.